The Letter That Never Was, February 14th, 1943, Hendon, North London. The morning fog pressed against the windows of the safe house as Juan Pujol Garcia sat before his Remington typewriter, his fingers hovering over the keys. Around him, papers scattered across the oak desk. Forged ration cards, fabricated identity documents, handwritten letters in varying scripts. Tommy Harris, his MI5 handler, stood by the fireplace, smoke curling from his cigarette as he watched his prized asset work. Pujol, codenamed GARBO by the British, began typing. The keys struck paper with mechanical precision, each letter forming words that would travel across enemy lines to Madrid, then Berlin. Words that would convince the Abwehr, German military intelligence, that their most valuable spy network in Britain was expanding. Mein lieber Herr Karl, Pujol typed in German, addressing his Abwehr handler. The room's only sounds were the typewriter's rhythm and the crackling fire. He paused, considering his next words carefully. This letter would introduce a new agent, someone who didn't exist, would never exist, yet would become one of the most trusted sources in Nazi Germany's intelligence apparatus. Harris approached, reading over Pujol's shoulder. "The waiter?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Pujol nodded, continuing to type. "Agent 4, Federico. A man of principles who serves meals in Liverpool's grand hotels by day and watches the Atlantic convoys by night." The fiction they were weaving was intricate. GARBO had already convinced the Germans he commanded a network of sub-agents across Britain. Agent 1 in Wales, Agent 2 covering the southwest, Agent 3 monitoring Scotland. Each was entirely fictional, yet the Abwehr believed implicitly in their reports. Now they would add another phantom to the roster. Pujol described Federico in meticulous detail, a Spanish waiter, 42 years old, working at the Adelphi Hotel in Liverpool. A man with anti-British sentiments stemming from his experiences during the Spanish Civil War. A man willing to betray his host country for ideology and money. Harris moved to the window, pulling back the blackout curtain slightly. Outside, London prepared for another day of wartime routine. Real agents moved through real streets, gathering actual intelligence. But here, in this room, they manufactured something more powerful than truth, believable lies that would shape the enemy's understanding of reality. "The beauty of Federico," Harris said, turning back, "is his position. Liverpool is Britain's lifeline. Every convoy report from there will seem golden to Berlin." Pujol finished the paragraph describing Federico's recruitment. He wrote of their chance meeting at a pro-fascist gathering in Liverpool, of Federico's willingness to help the cause, of his perfect vantage point overlooking the Mersey docks. Every detail was calculated to appeal to Abwehr sensibilities. The typewriter continued its steady percussion. Pujol added that Federico requested £45 monthly, enough to seem credible, not so much as to arouse suspicion. He mentioned Federico's nervousness about detection, his insistence on secure communication methods, his dedication despite the risk. Harris reached for a folder on the side table. Inside were blank receipt forms from Liverpool establishments, letterhead from the Adelphi Hotel, samples of handwriting they'd practiced to become Federico's signature. They'd prepared everything Agent 4 would need to exist on paper. "When will you send his first report?" Harris asked. "Next week," Pujol replied, pulling the sheet from the typewriter. "Let Berlin digest his recruitment first. Let them anticipate what he might provide. Anticipation makes intelligence seem more valuable." The letter complete, Pujol placed it in an envelope addressed to Karl Erich Kühlenthal, his Abwehr handler in Madrid. Within days, it would reach German military intelligence headquarters in Berlin. Within weeks, they would respond with enthusiasm, approving Federico's recruitment and eagerly awaiting his reports. Neither Pujol nor Harris could know then how completely Berlin would accept this fiction. They couldn't foresee that Agent 4 would become one of the Abwehr's most trusted sources. that German officers would cite his reports in strategic planning sessions, that his fabricated intelligence would influence decisions affecting thousands of lives. In that foggy London morning, they simply created another piece of their elaborate deception, another character in the greatest theatrical performance of the war. Federico, the waiter who never served a meal, would soon begin watching ships that sailed without his eyes ever seeing them, reporting movements he never witnessed, and shaping a war from a position he never occupied. The envelope sealed, Harris prepared it for the courier route that would carry it through neutral Portugal to Spain. GARBO's latest creation was ready to be born into the German intelligence files, where he would live a full and entirely fraudulent life. Building the Phantom March 1943, Liverpool. Tommy Harris stepped off the train at Liverpool Lime Street Station, his briefcase containing nothing that would reveal his true purpose. To any observer, he was simply another businessman traveling during wartime, tired, purposeful, unremarkable. The station bustled with soldiers heading to embarkation points, families saying uncertain goodbyes, and dock workers beginning or ending shifts. He walked through Liverpool's streets, memorizing details. The bombed-out buildings from the Blitz, still scarred and skeletal, the smell of the Mersey River mixing with coal smoke and salt air, the sound of ship horns echoing across the city. These details would feed GARBO's reports, making Federico's observations authentic. The Adelphi Hotel rose before him, its Victorian grandeur dulled by wartime austerity. Harris entered, studying the layout. The dining room where Federico supposedly worked, the service corridors a waiter would traverse, the windows overlooking the street. He ordered tea, watching the actual waiters move through their routines, noting their uniforms, their mannerisms, the rhythm of their work. An older waiter approached his table, and Harris studied him carefully. The slight stoop of shoulders from years of carrying trays, the practiced neutrality of expression, the economical movements of someone who'd served thousands of meals. This man would unknowingly provide the physical template for Federico's fictional existence. Back in London, Harris shared his observations with Pujol. Together they refined Federico's character. The waiter suffered from arthritis in his left hand, explaining why his handwriting sometimes varied. He had a daughter studying in Madrid, providing motivation for his need for extra money. He feared the British authorities discovering his anti-government views, justifying his caution and the need for secure communication methods. Pujol began crafting Federico's first intelligence report. Sitting at his typewriter, he channeled the character completely. Federico would write nervously, apologetically, with the verbose style of someone unused to intelligence work. His reports would mix genuine observations, details Harris had gathered in Liverpool, with carefully crafted misinformation. The first report described convoy movements that were partially accurate but strategically misleading. Federico noted ship numbers, types, and departure times, all verifiable enough to seem genuine, but subtly altered the convoy's composition and destination. British intelligence knew the Abwehr would check these details against other sources. The key was making Federico's reports consistent with what Germany already believed, while gradually shifting that belief in directions advantageous to the Allies. Harris procured actual receipts from Liverpool businesses. These would accompany Federico's expense reports, payments for information from dock workers, drinks bought for talkative merchant sailors, travel costs for watching ship movements. Each receipt was genuine, purchased or collected during Harris's visit, lending physical authenticity to the fictional agent's activities. They created a complete paper trail. Letters supposedly from Federico arrived via GARBO's Portuguese mail route, each written on appropriate paper, with appropriate postmarks, bearing handwriting that matched samples they'd carefully developed. The letters discussed personal matters alongside intelligence. Federico's concerns about his daughter's education costs, his struggles with blackout regulations, his nervousness about being discovered. The Abwehr responded with enthusiasm. Kuhlenthal's return letters praised Federico's work, approved expense payments, and requested more information about specific military installations near Liverpool. Berlin was buying the deception completely. In their London safe house, Pujol and Harris refined their craft. They studied German intelligence priorities, understanding what information the Abwehr desperately wanted versus what they merely found interesting. Federico's reports would satisfy German expectations while supporting larger Allied deception operations. Harris taught Pujol the art of the chicken feed, genuine but harmless intelligence that established credibility. Federico reported accurate details about Liverpool's air raid damage, civilian morale, and food shortages. Information the Germans could verify through other sources, cementing his reliability for when truly critical deceptions were needed. They added texture to Federico's existence. He complained about wartime rationing, mentioned favorite pubs, described interactions with hotel guests. These mundane details made him human, believable, trustworthy. The Germans weren't just receiving intelligence reports. They were developing a relationship with a source they believed shared their ideology and goals. Federico's monthly letters became routine, each one advancing the deception while maintaining his character's consistency. The Abwehr never questioned his existence. They had his letters, his receipts, his observations. They had no reason to doubt and every reason to trust. The Web of Lies. June 1943. MI5 headquarters, St. James's Street, London. Major Thomas Argyle Robertson, tar to his colleagues, spread the latest batch of GARBO's correspondence across his desk. As head of B1A section, responsible for managing double agents, he'd overseen dozens of cases. None approached GARBO's scope or ambition. The Spanish agents' network now numbered 27 sub-agents, most fictional, some real but controlled. Agent 4, the Liverpool waiter, had become particularly valuable. The Germans are requesting specific information about the 15th Scottish Division, Robertson said, looking up at Harris and Pujol. They've asked Federico 3 times in the past month. Pujol understood immediately. The Germans' persistent interest meant they were planning something that required knowledge of Scottish troop positions. Whatever the Abwehr wanted to know, MI5 needed to feed them carefully calibrated misinformation. Harris unfolded a map of Britain across Robertson's desk. Federico can provide what they want, but we control what he sees. The 15th Scottish is moving north. We tell Berlin they're moving south. This was the delicate dance of double crosswork. Provide too much accurate information, and you aided the enemy. Provide obviously false information, and you compromised your agent's credibility. The sweet spot lay in mixing truth with lies so subtly that the Germans couldn't distinguish between them. Pujol drafted Federico's next report with particular care. The waiter wrote that he'd travelled to Scotland on his day off, following a tip from a drunk merchant marine who mentioned troop movements. This explained how Federico could report on military activities far from Liverpool. The story was plausible. Wartime Britain was full of people travelling for both legitimate and questionable reasons. Federico's Scottish report mixed observable truths with strategic falsehoods. He accurately described Glasgow's bomb damage and rationing conditions, details verifiable through other German sources. But he placed the 15th Scottish Division in positions contradicting their actual deployment, supporting broader Allied deception efforts regarding invasion planning. The Abwehr swallowed it whole. Kuhlenthal's response praised Federico's initiative and approved additional payment for the Scottish intelligence. More importantly, German military planners began incorporating Federico's false troop positions into their strategic assessments. Robertson tracked how Federico's reports influenced German intelligence summaries. Documents captured from spy networks and decrypted through Ultra revealed the Abwehr circulating Federico's information to Wehrmacht headquarters. Generals were making decisions based on what a non-existent waiter allegedly observed. "We've created a monster," Robertson said with dark humor during one planning session. Berlin trusts Federico more than some of their actual agents. Harris suggested expanding Federico's access. Perhaps the waiter had befriended a clerk in the local military administrative office. This would explain increasingly detailed information about unit designations, equipment allocations, and movement orders. Each expansion of Federico's capabilities required careful justification. The Germans were thorough, questioning any intelligence that seemed too convenient. Pujol crafted letters showing Federico's growing confidence. The nervous waiter of March had become a practiced intelligence gatherer by July. He developed methods for photographing documents with a concealed camera, purchased, Federico claimed, from a black market dealer in Manchester. The camera never existed, but its mention in correspondence made Federico's enhanced reporting capacity credible. The expense receipts grew more elaborate. Harris procured actual film processing receipts from Liverpool photography shops, railway tickets showing Federico's supposed travel, and restaurant bills from locations where he allegedly met informants. Each piece of paper documented activities that never occurred, creating an irrefutable paper trail of fabricated espionage. Federico began recruiting his own sub-agents. Agent 4-1 was supposedly a communist dock worker in Liverpool who hated Churchill's government. Agent 4-2 was a clerk in the regional military transport office. Agent 4-3 worked in a munitions factory near Manchester. All were fictional, but the Germans accepted their recruitment as natural growth of Federico's network. This proliferation served multiple purposes. It explained how Federico obtained increasingly diverse intelligence. It demonstrated his value as not just a source, but a handler of sources. And it created redundancy. If the Germans ever doubted one sub-agent, the others would maintain the deception. The Abwehr increased Federico's payment to £125 monthly, recognizing his enhanced productivity. They sent specific questionnaires asking about industrial production, railway schedules, and troop movements. Each question revealed German intelligence priorities, helping British planners understand enemy strategic thinking. Pujol and Harris spent hours ensuring consistency across Federico's expanding operation. Every sub-agent needed a distinct voice, believable background, and logical access to their reported information. The fictional communist dock worker had different writing style and priorities than the fictional clerk. Details had to align. If Federico reported seeing a ship on Tuesday and sub-agent 4-1 mentioned the same ship on Wednesday, the observations had to be consistent. The operation had grown beyond simple deception into a complex theatrical production. Every letter was a performance, every receipt a prop, every report a carefully scripted scene. And the audience in Berlin never suspected they were watching fiction. The invasion that never was, April 1944. The deception intensifies. 23 Allied divisions prepared to storm Normandy's beaches. The invasion, Operation Overlord, would determine the war's outcome. If Germany reinforced Normandy adequately, D-Day could fail catastrophically, costing tens of thousands of Allied lives and postponing liberation for months or years. British intelligence launched Operation Fortitude, an elaborate deception convincing Germany the invasion would strike Pas-de-Calais instead of Normandy. Every controlled German agent in Britain participated, including GARBO's entire fictional network. Agent 4, the Liverpool waiter, would play a crucial role. In the London safe house, Pujol and Harris worked 18-hour days, coordinating Federico's reports with the broader deception plan. The fictional waiter observed troop movements, suggesting an invasion force assembling opposite Calais. His reports corroborated intelligence from other sources, real radio traffic, dummy equipment installations, and reports from other double agents. Federico wrote excitedly about American divisions arriving in Liverpool, heading east toward ports facing France's narrowest channel crossing. He noted equipment types, unit patches, and commander names, all carefully selected to support the Calais deception. Some information was accurate, increasing credibility. Most was strategically false, directing German attention away from Normandy. The Germans trusted Federico implicitly. His reports traveled quickly from Madrid to Berlin, reaching Wehrmacht headquarters within 48 hours. German intelligence analysts combined Federico's observations with reports from other sources, building a picture of Allied intentions that was exactly what British planners wanted them to see. Pujol crafted Federico's messages with increasing urgency as D-Day approached. The waiter reported convoy movements, supply accumulations, and troop concentrations, all suggesting imminent invasion at Calais. His sub-agents contributed supporting details. The communist dockworker noted ships being retrofitted for specific operations. The transport clerk reported railway schedules indicating massive troop movements towards southeastern England. On June 6, 1944, Allied forces landed in Normandy. German forces in the region fought desperately, but Wehrmacht reserves, positioned to defend Calais, based partly on Federico's reports, remained in place. Hitler's headquarters, convinced the Normandy landing was a feint before the real invasion at Calais, held back reinforcements that might have thrown the Allies into the sea. For weeks after D-Day, Federico continued reporting preparations for the Calais invasion. His messages kept German divisions pinned in place, preventing their deployment to the Normandy battlefield, where they were desperately needed. The non-existent waiter had helped shape the war's decisive battle. Harris monitored German responses through ultra-intercepts. Wehrmacht communications showed continued belief in the Calais threat well into July. Some German units remained positioned against Federico's phantom invasion into August, when Allied forces had already broken out from Normandy and were racing across France. The success was staggering. A fictional character, created on a London typewriter, had influenced decisions at the highest levels of German military command. Generals had positioned divisions, allocated resources, and planned operations based on reports from a man who never existed. Robertson called it the greatest achievement in the history of deception operations. Eisenhower himself acknowledged that the double-cross system, including GARBO's network, had been worth an entire army group in the invasion's success. But Federico's work wasn't finished. As Allied armies advanced toward Germany, the fictional waiter continued reporting from Liverpool, still trusted, still believed. His reports now focused on war production, troop replacements, and supply movements, all carefully crafted to support ongoing Allied operations while maintaining his credibility. The Abwehr, even as it crumbled under Allied advances, continued processing Federico's intelligence. Kuhlenthal, later captured, still believed in his Liverpool source's legitimacy. The Germans never discovered the truth. The perfect lie, May 1945. War's end. Germany surrendered unconditionally. Europe's cities smoldered in ruins, millions dead, a continent devastated. In the chaos of Nazi Germany's collapse, Allied intelligence teams raced to capture documents before they could be destroyed. They sought confirmation of what they'd achieved, proof that their deceptions had worked. In Berlin's rubble, British officers found Abwehr archives. Filing cabinets spilled German intelligence assessments, agent reports, and operational documents. Among them, files on GARBO's network, including extensive material on Agent 4, the Liverpool waiter. The German files contained every letter Federico had sent, carefully indexed and cross-referenced. Analysts' notes filled the margins. Comparisons with other intelligence sources, verification attempts, assessments of reliability. Every report showed confirmed or highly reliable stamps. Federico's file was thick, containing 3 years of correspondence. The Germans had compiled a complete biography, his recruitment date, payment records, detailed descriptions of his sub-agents, even sketches attempting to map his network structure. They'd treated him as one of their most valuable British sources. In one captured document, a German analyst wrote, Agent 4 continues to provide exceptional intelligence from the Liverpool region. His reports consistently prove accurate when verified against other sources. Reliability, highest. Recommendation: continue current payment structure and maintain regular contact. Harris and Pujol examined these documents in London, seeing their creation through German eyes. The fictional waiter had lived completely in enemy minds. German intelligence officers had worried about his security, celebrated his successes, and trusted his judgment. They'd believed in Federico more fully than he'd ever existed. The captured files revealed something unexpected. Federico had influenced operations beyond intelligence assessment. Wehrmacht logistics officers had used his reports to predict Allied supply routes. Luftwaffe targeting specialists had considered his observations when selecting bombing priorities. Even Nazi propaganda officials had cited information ultimately sourced from his reports. Robertson calculated the impact. Federico's D-Day deception had contributed to keeping 15 German divisions away from Normandy for crucial weeks. His pre-invasion reports had shaped German defensive preparations, directing resources to wrong locations. His continuing reports throughout 1944 had supported Allied breakout operations. How many lives did Federico save? Harris wondered aloud, holding German documents assessing his fictional creation's work. Pujol remained quiet, understanding the paradox. They'd created Federico to deceive, but that deception had served truth. The truth that Nazi Germany needed to be defeated, that its intelligence services needed to be misled, that winning the war required elaborate theatrical performances where actors were ghosts and scripts were lies serving greater truths. The Germans never discovered Federico's non-existence. Even in surrender, captured Abwehr officers defended their sources' legitimacy. Kuhlenthal, interrogated by Allied intelligence, insisted his agents had been genuine, productive, and loyal. But Agent 4 never existed, his interrogator explained. Kuhlenthal refused to believe it. Impossible. I have his letters, his reports, his receipts. I know his handwriting, his concerns, his daughter's name. The interrogator showed him proof. Testimony from Pujol, documents from MI5, explanations of how every detail had been fabricated. Kuhlenthal still struggled to accept it. Federico had been real to him, a trusted colleague in espionage, a committed anti-British partisan. Learning he was fiction shattered Kuhlenthal's professional confidence. Other German intelligence officers reacted similarly. The double-cross system's revelation humiliated the Abwehr. Their entire British network had been controlled, their intelligence deliberately poisoned, their strategic assessments fundamentally flawed. And they'd never suspected. Even trusted sources like Federico had been phantoms. For Pujol and Harris, victory was bittersweet. They'd succeeded brilliantly, but success meant acknowledging the war's dark necessities, the lies, manipulations, and deceptions required to defeat Hitler's regime. Federico represented intelligence work's essence, creating believable falsehood to serve larger truth. MI5 debriefed Pujol extensively, documenting every aspect of the GARBO operation for future intelligence training. Federico became a case study in deception tradecraft, how to build and maintain a fictional agent, how to create supporting documentation, how to calibrate intelligence to be believable while serving strategic purposes. The Liverpool waiter who never existed had become immortal in intelligence history. His story would be studied by spy services worldwide, teaching future generations how one man with a typewriter and another with careful planning could create a phantom that changed history's course. The documents now sit in British archives, Federico's letters filed alongside reports explaining their fabrication. Historians study them, marveling at the deception's audacity and completeness. The Germans believed because the lie was perfect, detailed, consistent, humanized, and sustained over years. Federico never served a meal, never watched a convoy, never photographed a document. Yet his observations shaped Wehrmacht deployments, influenced Führer headquarters decisions, and contributed to Nazi Germany's defeat. In the strange mathematics of intelligence warfare, the most effective spy was the one who existed only on paper. Juan Pujol Garcia survived the war, eventually settling in Venezuela, his achievements classified for decades. Tommy Harris continued intelligence work, dying in a car accident in 1964. Their creation, Agent 4, the phantom waiter of Liverpool, remained their masterpiece, proof that in warfare's shadow games, carefully constructed fiction could matter more than fact.